COVID-19 Relief and Recovery Committee meeting of the 19th of May 2020. I'd like to start by acknowledging we meet on the lands of the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome everyone to the meeting. You might notice that we have a bit of a hybrid where we do have a partial return to the chamber. So tonight the CEO, David McLennan, and myself are in the council chamber and still using Zoom to transmit this meeting to everybody. And as we progress, we'll continue to try to get back to in-person meetings as we set up the chamber to accommodate council members, staff and members of the community coming in to ask questions as well. So I can see we don't have any apologies or members on leave of absence, and I'll just go to the Manager of Governance to see whether we have received any public questions for this evening's meeting.
Through you, Mayor Cole, we've received one comment from Darren Beasley, the CEO of Swimming WA of North Perth. This is in respect to item 7.2, which is financial assistance recommendation for city tenants and WA Swimming Association. The comments are, we understand that come July there is a recommendation being put forward to the committee to look at May and June numbers and make amendments to the current proposed 35% waiver, 35% deferral and 30% payment plan. Just confirming that in light of the severe impacts that COVID has had on our business, our revenue will be almost 100% eliminated in these coming months from not being able to hold events that we would otherwise be able to. This will in turn give us worse times yet to come, so to say, meaning that May and June numbers will be a lot more worse off than, say, February and March, where we were able to trade on normal terms for pretty much full time. To give the city an idea, Swimming WA is forecasting over $504,000 in loss of revenue from now to mid-September, with committed expenditure for $237,000, meaning we'll be in a deficit for some $267,000 between now and mid-September. Darren, Swimming WA hoping to be able to add this item on the agenda for tomorrow night's meeting for the committee to consider early impact other than the suggested 35%, 35% and 30% approach, as you would be aware. Cash is king and timing is everything. We are hoping to stretch out our cash flows. However, we are already seeing a strain on our reserves for the above mentioned reasons, which are having a negative impact on how we are able to be there for our 85 member clubs as they themselves navigate through these uncharted waters. That's the only question we've received, Mayor Cole.
Thank you very much, Manager. We can deal with that when we come to that item. So thank you very much for providing that additional information. So next item on the agenda, response to previous public questions taken on notice. We had nil. Item 4, declarations of interest. Council members, do you have any items to declare? No declarations of interest for this evening's meeting. Item 5, applications for leave of absence. No, not even now. You can go down south. Okay. No applications for leave of absence. So we'll go to item 6, confirmation of minutes. This is for last week's COVID Relief and Recovery Committee meeting of the 12th of May 2020. Could I please have a mover and seconder to adopt the minutes? Move Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded Councillor Castle. All those in favour? I declare the minutes carried. Thank you. We're now moving to business arising. We have 3 items under business arising this evening. The first, 7.1, is our COVID-19 weekly update. Can I call on a mover and seconder for the item, please? Move Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded Councillor Castle. Councillor Gontaszewski.
Thank you, Mayor. Look, I think, again, really pleased to receive this update, and I don't know if we want to receive a general update on how things have gone since the 18th in terms of our library opening and ongoing plans towards the reopening of Beatty Park. I did just, however, have a question in relation to item 7.2 from our COVID meeting of the the 5th of May in relation to the communications plan and that becoming an attachment to this relief and recovery implementation plan. As yet, I don't see it referenced, and it also isn't, despite it being part of a council initiative, it's not referenced in that I could see within our plan. So as an action that needs to occur. So I was just wondering if I could get some commentary on that.
Through you, Mayor Cole, I believe that's a bit of an oversight on my part. The communications activities have been itemised and mentioned in the implementation plan itself, but not really articulated as an attachment to the plan. But I'm very happy to do that at the next meeting and thereon, if that's useful for the committee. Yeah,
thank you. Yeah, I think just in alignment with the resolution of the committee, that would be very useful. Thank you. But other than that, I didn't have any specific questions on this section of the agenda.
Thank you, Councillor Gontaszewski. Just on that question that you asked, one way that the communications could perhaps be incorporated is to add an additional column to the existing implementation table, so that where there is a communications action attached to one of the key actions that we might, you know, obviously we have to squeeze it on the page, but I think that that might be one consideration of a way just to sort of have a column saying communications action, so that if there is one, that it's then tied back to the key action that's happening in the implementation plan. I'm not sure whether that would work and whether that would cover off all communication actions, but just thought could be one way to do it.
Thanks, Mayor Cole. I think you're right. Maybe a combination of that, where there is perhaps a social media statement that can be referenced, but if it's a little bit more campaign-like, if where there's a concerted sort of program of activities that might serve well to be a separate attachment. So if you're comfortable, I'll come back with a suggestion at the next meeting.
Thank you. Councillor Castle, would you like to comment or ask questions?
Thank you, Mayor Cole. Just a couple of short questions in relation to item 2.35. We've stated in the plan that we're liaising with the sporting clubs about training requirements and how they can commence doing their training. Do we have any information yet about when they might recommence games and that those delayed seasons might start again, and how that's going to be managed?
Councillor Castle, would it help if I go to the manager for Built Environment and Wellbeing, perhaps to give a bit of an overview of what has been occurring this week, because it has been those big implementation weeks?
I think that would be great, and it'll probably answer the other questions I have. So thank you.
Raise and also to tell you about how the team's been dealing with getting sporting clubs back to non-contact training. So it has been another big week with a lot of activity happening, so it might be good just at this point to get a run through.
Through you, Mayor Cole. The agenda for this meeting, as we know, information is really fast moving during COVID, and so it's almost in weeks such as this, often the updates within the agenda are a little bit out of date, and perhaps in these weeks following the implementation of a new phase, I can provide a verbal update at the beginning of the weekly update report, just so that you can have an understanding as to what's been happening. In terms of, since this agenda item was released, the COVID safety plans were released by the WA government, and they took a little bit longer than what we were hoping, which meant that really a lot of our teams really had to work quite heavily at the end of last week through to the beginning of this week to enable things to occur. One of those areas was our community groups and our sporting clubs, and being able to enable them to restart up their training. And the community partners, I know, have been working around the clock, liaising with our sports clubs to enable that training to occur. In terms of Councillor Castle's question about contact training, that's really not within phase 2. So we will see what happens with phase 3 and phase 4. I'm not sure which phase it will come in, including games as well. That's one of the big challenges of COVID, trying to anticipate what information is going to come when. The EHOs, environmental health officers and the place managers have been really active with our local businesses and actually going out and providing a face-to-face advisory service. And they've been keeping a log of how they're going with that. They're dealing with queries, including around COVID safety plans, being able to enable businesses to utilise al fresco, those sorts of things. So there's quite a bit of work going there. Our community facilities, the library, BD Park, the community centre, they've all started completing their own COVID safety plans. And as we've seen, the library has opened. I did a bit of a walk around today and checked out the library, and I was really impressed. I thought the team's done a brilliant job to get things started up there. The numbers still aren't coming through significantly. So hasn't been any real challenge in terms of the 20-person limit at the moment with the library. BD Park looks great. They've done a lot of cleaning. They've got some really good systems in place there. And the other place I visited today was Leederville Square, just to see how businesses were starting to utilise that space. I guess it's our first trial space within Vincent. 2 businesses have started using the space, so Kincho's and Grilled. One of the catches there is that many businesses are waiting on liquor licensing to provide the go-ahead to be able to serve alcohol within that space, which they can do ancillary with a meal. And I understand that the place managers in particular are still liaising quite heavily with those businesses. So, and through all this, what we're been trying to do in terms of our communications is to have some common messaging through all of our facilities, so we're not working in silos and we're not reinventing the wheel, and we've got the same messaging happening throughout the city. And really phase 2 is, the main crux of phase 2 was to be able to increase numbers and allow some certain businesses and community facilities to reopen. So the main message has been around the social distancing and the 1.5 metres reminder. I think that's just a bit of a summary as to the main parts of the implementation plan that were to do with phase 2. So I'm happy to take any further questions.
Thank you. I think you've covered everything I was going to ask, and really just wanted to say thank you to the staff for how quickly they've been able to turn these services around. I think particularly giving those businesses and clubs that helping hand to get their head around the new requirements and to get them back up and operating as quickly and as safely as possible is really valuable, and it'll be really interesting to see how that progresses. Obviously it's still very early, and I think there are still some groups that are waiting to see how that plays out before actually reopening, but it's great to see that we're able to help the ones who are ready to go, so thank you. That's all I have on this item.
Thank you, Councillor. Look, I think that being responsible for helping to implement these phased easing of restrictions is a pretty tough job, and the team is working really hard. There was a little bit of, I think, misunderstanding from what was happening with some of our sporting clubs, but, you know, we've effectively had staff members working across the weekend trying to keep up with the fact that the announcement might be made Sunday a week ago, but then the COVID safety plans came out on Thursday afternoon, and then there's further advice coming through Welga and through sporting codes up until Friday afternoon just gone. So there's a lot of detailed advice that then flows, and not at the same time of the announcement, which is really key for those who are trying to implement and support that return. So I think the team are doing really well in very short time frames with a great deal of will to get things happening and to really try to meet those deadlines. But it's pretty tireless work, I have to say. Like it's pretty full on for our team doing that work on the ground. And I think it's been amazing to see that on Monday night we had North Perth United back training, we've had the Modernians back training, we've got East Perth and Subi's football clubs back training, and many more following suit. I think quite easy also for those who have a leased premises where they have exclusive lease. They simply have to do their COVID safe plan and then they can get on with it. And, you know, obviously for sporting clubs, again, they are trying to put in place all the protocols that then come with that. And they are still extremely strict protocols because we're only just in phase 2. So all of the requirements around registering each player, keeping to your maximum number, still maintaining that 4 square metre distance between players, very minimal equipment that can be used and must be cleaned after each use. So it's still very high bar requirements at this stage. So I think that it's not just about the city doing what we need to do, but also the clubs feeling that level of comfort that they've actually got their coaches and their, you know, support volunteers all understanding what they need to do when they're out there training. So it's it does take a bit of time, but I think that when you see that you've already got clubs back training as of Monday, phenomenal turnaround time. So really think the team's doing a great job there. Now I just wanted to ask, just to check with you, Manager, are we still looking good for Beatty Park on Thursday?
Nicole, yes we are.
Right.
So they've completed their COVID safety plans and we're reviewing those, and the facility is looking really good, really ready, and I can see hand washing stations, all the signage and prompts in place, so I'm pretty confident for them.
That's good. And then just one other question. It talked about resumption of in-person council meetings for July. Do you think there's any chance we might be able to achieve that for the June council meeting rather than July?
Through you, Nicole, we are aiming, so tonight we're testing, I guess, using the council chamber with yourself and the CEO, and we're aiming to test this again over the next week, and we will aim to try and get back into the council chamber for June, but we do have to do some more testing first.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I had on this item. Are there any further comments or questions? Okay, I'll put it, all those in favour? Declare it carried. The next item on the agenda, 7.2, financial assistance recommendations for city tenants for WA Swimming Association Incorporated. Have a mover and seconder, please. Moved Councillor Castle, seconded Councillor Gontaszewski. Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Nicole. Really just looking for some commentary on the statement that was made in public question time today around, I guess, that time lag between what is currently the turnover and what is to come. What we're looking at here for this particular item is just until June 2020. So is the proposal that those sorts of lags will be picked up in the next review, and there may well be a correction at that point, or how do we respond to the concerns that were raised?
Through you, Mayor Cole, yeah, Councillor, that's exactly how we see it operating. Obviously, it's a rapidly changing environment, so we've decided to take it a quarter at a time, and then we do an assessment based on the information we have in front of us at that point in time. But we understand that we need to be prepared to review and adapt that as it's required. So we are at the moment setting these standards quarterly, but I would be suggesting to any of the clubs that if their situation has significantly deteriorated from when they provided us with their financials, then that's a matter of getting back in touch, and then we'll revise it. We are trying to stay close to it, and because we have these committee meetings fairly frequently, we can bring it back if we need to.
Councillor Gontaszewski.
No, nothing from me.
So just to reiterate, Executive Director, we understand what Swimming WA are saying, and we understand that they are experiencing more loss of revenue, but we have the ability to deal with that after this relief measure is put in place, and then we'll assess again and deal with further hardship measures for the months following from June.
Correct. Yes, that's correct, Mayor Cole.
All right. Okay, on that basis, that's fine. Any comments or questions? Okay, I'll put it, all those in favour. I declare it carried. That brings us to item 7.3, which is business initiatives. Can I have a mover and seconder, please? Move Councillor Gontaszewski, seconded Councillor Castle.
Yes, thank you. Just another mountain of work that seems to be being produced at the moment by the team, and in conjunction with the town teams through the roundtable and the town team movement. It's great to see. I've had a read of the business e-newsletter, and it's fantastic that we've got a platform like this that's going out. I did wonder, in terms of building our business database and the reach of the newsletter, just wanted to check in whether the mechanism that's used to distribute it also has a way that businesses could potentially, that are receiving the newsletter, could forward on to their neighbouring businesses, etc., and have them potentially sign up. Is that something that's able to be accommodated within the platform that we're using?
I'll have to take that on notice and speak to the team to understand whether that's possible. But we are building that database constantly. So we've just added all of our food businesses as well. So it's growing. Hopefully there is a way of us, allowing the community to add into it as well. So I'll find out and get back to you on that one.
Thanks. Yeah, look, I think it's great. This has been something that's actually been talked about, it's way before coronavirus, the ability for the city to have better mechanisms to contact our business owners and business operators. So I'm really pleased to see that we've got some of the ideas that have been put forward through the round table and from the community that are able to be implemented. And yeah, once again, congratulations on turning this stuff around in such a short time period.
Thank you, Councillor Gontaszewski. Councillor Castle.
Thank you, Mayor Cole. Yes, similarly, I think it's fantastic to see the amount of work that's been achieved in a short period of time, and that database is going to be an incredibly useful tool now and in the future. I did have a question. Obviously, we're saying it's pretty up to date, but currently incomplete. And in the report, one of the challenges that's mentioned is that many of the businesses are currently closed. Do we feel that we have a good handle on where those gaps are and how we can fill them in the future? Are there other pockets of businesses that we think we're missing?
Yes, through you, Mayor Cole. There are pockets that we're missing. We have all of the food businesses, which is a positive, but those businesses that are closed or that aren't in contact with their town teams are certainly the area where we need to proactively, I think, try and seek that information. And seek their contact details. So they're the main areas where we have gaps. We have all of our food businesses, and we have everyone who's in contact with their town team. And we have other businesses that we are in contact with regularly who make inquiries with the city. But we really need to, broaden this, take this opportunity to create a process where we're capturing everyone who comes in contact with the city and proactively going out and getting the details of those that we haven't been in contact with for a while and who aren't in contact with town teams.
Thank you. Yes, that's what struck me, is that I think that this needs to be embedded into a number of other areas of the business, so that we take those opportunities when we have incidental contact with businesses to make sure they're aware of these type of services, and that we add them to our list, because I think there will be a lot of businesses out there that are not customer facing, that are harder for us to keep in contact with, and perhaps not in town centres. So they might be take a bit longer to fill in, but if we can look at all different ways to incorporate them, that would be good. I also just wanted to say, I think the health checks seem to have been a really valuable exercise to run and really helpful for the city to identify where support is needed. You know, examples like businesses having trouble managing patrons, that's an area that we, you know, can hopefully assist them in how do they control the crowds, how do they manage their square meterage and the limitations. So I think that's really valuable, and I think it would be great to see that repeated at regular intervals, even beyond COVID times.
Thank you, Councillor Castle. I just wanted to have a bit of a question and a thought about how we can keep the Open for Business directory relevant. It is really, and it's a difficult one because things are evolving so quickly, but how does that directory evolve with the changing restrictions? And I did say that people were sort of posting around Facebook, is there a list of businesses that are open for dining in? So I think that's the sort of thing where, you know, it doesn't last forever and it is a bit of a workload to keep it relevant, but that's probably the next direction, in that we've gone from our businesses open, and some, you know, some are still closed. So that's still a valid help to identify which businesses are open. And then as the restrictions change and evolve, it's almost like, well, what they are open, but what services are they offering? So I think the big change that we're seeing is that there are now food and beverage businesses that are offering dine-in. And so it's about how do we keep it relevant and keep that information valuable and help our local businesses and help our community with that directory and keep promoting that as an up-to-date and useful resource. So that was just a thought on that one. I also just wanted to ask, it talked about in terms of actually keeping in contact with businesses, it talked about localised, and I wasn't really familiar with the work that localised do, or what they provide as a third party provider. Director of Strategy and Development, are you able to, is that something you could take on notice, or do you know anything about the role that localised could play?
Yes, I have been provided with some information on that previously, but I will have to take it on notice to give you a full comprehensive rundown of what they're providing. Okay.
Yeah, not urgent, so that'd be useful to know. And also just sort of thinking ahead, whether we've talked about an economic development strategy, whether we actually need to talk about in its place having an economic rebound strategy, and whether some of that planning work happening around recovery and reboot and the role of our town team roundtable could feed into a process around establishing an economic rebound plan, which could be something which is developed in a similar way to the way we've developed the implementation plan that supports the COVID strategy, but is specific to economic rebound during, as we sort of go through the roadmap and beyond. Just a thought for discussion as we go forward.
Yes, that's a very good suggestion. We're in the middle of developing the economic development strategy at the moment, and so we've had a lot of discussions around how that incorporates our response and that rebound plan to the current COVID situation. Separating those two out is probably a great idea, where we can go through the same process we've gone through to develop this implementation plan and the current business initiatives that are set out here. And we can develop a simple rebound plan that's based on that process and the current situation. And the economic development strategy can sit above that. I think that's a very simple way of approaching that. So it's certainly what we're currently doing all of this stuff anyway. So I think it makes sense to put it all together into one simple plan.
Mm. I think that this structure has just really been able to give everyone an overview of what the city is doing, so that it's a good way of actually saying this is the whole piece that the City of Vincent is doing, and it actually is a really good way of sort of assigning responsibility and making sure those timeframes are met, and also an ability to then take that information to a group like the town team meeting or roundtable and to say, this is what we're doing, what do you think, how can we grow this, and then feeding in that information from health checks, etc., so that you sort of have that one place where all of those ideas are collected and it becomes part of an implementation plan, and it's a way of ensuring that things don't fall through the cracks or are missed. So I think this is working well and keeping everyone really focused at the moment, and it might be a good vehicle to sort of try to use that template to see through the rebound period. Just a comment anyway, don't need to respond to that. All right, are there any further questions? Okay, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Declare it carried. Okay, next item is announcements by the presiding member. Well, I'll save you all because we have the council meeting tonight and I have to make announcements, so I'm not going to go on this evening. Any general business, item 9? No. We don't have any confidential items, item 10. Item 11, next meeting. Next meeting on the 26th of May, we'll be having our regular update. We'll be talking about the cash in lieu expenditure draft plan, assuming that's the car parking cash in lieu. Director of Strategy and Development. Yes?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, yep. Talking about financial assistance recommendations for city tenants, East Perth Football Club and Gymnastics WA. So as you can see, we will continue to deal with those almost on a weekly basis. And rates hardship guidelines, which will be very good to see. So we look forward to seeing you at the next meeting at 5 p.m. Next week. And for those who enjoy tuning into these meetings, we will be having our ordinary council meeting at 6 p.m. this evening. So feel free to join us for that too. Thank you very much, everyone, for your attendance. And I declare the meeting closed at 5:35 p.m.